This was a day that I had been arrested at a peace rally in 1974, just after Pat Oliveto got there. Pat quickly left town. He saw what was coming on the horizon. As Coach was driving me home from the jailhouse that day, he is just in my face saying, "Walton, what are you doing? You know, this is a disgrace. You're the NCAA Player of the Year, you're the Academic Player of the Year, you're the team captain, you're the reigning champion, you haven't lost a game since you've been here, and here you are getting arrested, and that is a reflection on me, that is a reflection on our university, on our country, and everything that I stand for, and that is unacceptable." And I'm back in his face saying, "What are you talking about, Coach? You're unacceptable, because what's going on in Southeast Asia, all my friends are coming back in body bags and wheelchairs, and I'm not going to stand for that anymore. I'm going to stand up and be counted." And so we go back and forth, and at the end of the day, he drops me off at the dorm, and he said, "You know what, Walton? I think that you're probably right on this Vietnam thing, but your method, your approach is wrong. And what you're doing out there is you're in a situation where you're infringing on the rights and privileges of others. So what I suggest you do, Walton, is write letters." And I looked at him and I said, "You're a sillier old man than I ever thought you were." And I got out and I thanked him for the ride home and certainly for putting up the cash money to get me out of jail. And so while he told me to write letters and I said goodbye to him, a lightning bolt flash of inspiration one more time. And I went immediately down to his office, into his secretary, Aldine. I said, "Aldine, you got any stationery?" And she said, "Yeah, Bill, no problem whatsoever." And so she handed me this piece of paper, blank, pretty as can be. And on the top of the page was a picture of John Wooden and all the basketballs with the championship years in it, 64 all the way through 73. And I took this letter back to my dorm room, put it in my typewriter, and I just handpicked this incredible letter to Nixon outlining all his crimes against humanity, demanding an end to the war in Southeast Asia, demanding his resignation, and then I thanked him in advance for his cooperation. And so I take the letter into the locker room the next day, and it was very tense, because while all the guys in the team had been at the peace rally the day before, I was the one who the cops signaled out and said, "We're going after the big red guy over there." And so they said, "Bill, you all right? Is everything okay?" I said, "Yeah, and I wrote this letter as Coach Wooden told me to." They said, "Let me see it, Bill." And they looked at it, and they're reading, "Oh, this is great, Bill." And so they all signed the letter. Jamal Wilkes, Greg Lee, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton. And this was an incredible manifesto here. And then as the team captain, I take it in to Coach Wooden's office. And I said, "Coach, that was a great discussion we had yesterday." He said, "Yeah, Bill, just always remember that when everybody thinks alike, nobody thinks, and it's okay to disagree. Just don't be disagreeable about it." I said, "Okay, Coach, enough of the crazy maxims. I got this letter you told me to write." He said, "Oh, really? Let me see it, Bill." I said, "Well, Coach, I'd like you to take a look at it and then sign it." He said, "Sure, well, let's take a read." And so I give him the piece of paper, and it's got his picture on the top of it. And UCLA all over the top heading. And he starts reading it, and you can just see his fingers. He wants to tear this thing up. It's absolutely unbelievable. But then he looks up at me with the sad, soft eyes of a father who's been let down. And he handed me the piece of paper back in perfect condition. And he said to me, "Walton, I can't sign this, and I sure hope you're not going to send this in. But in perfect condition, I indeed mailed it in, and what do you know? 3 weeks later, Nixon resigned. It was absolutely incredible." And then I had the chance in 1994. Coach Wooden and I were both inducted into the Academic All-America Hall of Fame in Washington, D.C., our great city of hope. How special it was to be there that day. And Coach Wooden, whose favorite American is Abraham Lincoln. You walk into his house today, and he's got all this incredible basketball memorabilia, but the first things you see, a picture of Mother Teresa here and a picture of Abraham Lincoln right there. I'm a little surprised that Bunny and Ben's pictures are not there as well, but we're going to have to take care of that when I get home sometime later. And so when Coach Wooden and I were in Washington that day, I asked him, "Coach, let's go take a tour." And so with Abraham Lincoln being his favorite American, Coach and I went to the Lincoln Memorial. And here were these two old guys helping each other. I don't know who was worse off, an 85-year-old John Wooden or a bent over and crippled Bill Walton. And we're going up the steps to the Lincoln Memorial. And Coach Wooden gets up there and he starts reciting the Gettysburg Address by memory. It's just incredible. And this big crowd comes around, and it's such a sad place, the Lincoln Memorial, even though Abraham Lincoln stands for so many great things in our world, in our life. And then as the crowd broke up and Coach Wooden and I were walking down these steps, we get to the bottom with the reflecting pool out in front and the Washington Monument out in the distance, and so much optimism, so much joy, so much chance. I look at Coach and I say, hey, Coach, you know, right over here is the Vietnam Memorial. Why don't you come over here with me for a minute? And if any of you folks have ever been there on the Washington Mall and been to the saddest place in our country's history, until they build the next one. And here it was, everybody crying, everybody in wheelchairs, flowers, pictures, hands on the wall. Not a word could be said down there. And as we're coming up out of the bottom of the V, Coach Wooden starts reciting a poem, because he's got an incredible memory. I have no memory, I have no mind, no short term, no long term, whatever it is. I can't recite basically my name by memory. But here Coach Wooden at 95 today is just an incredible poet and goes on. And he started reciting a poem by Grantland Rice, one of his favorite poets. And while I can't recite it from memory, I'm going to read it to you right now. And the poem is called Two Sides of War. And it goes, all wars are planned by older men in council rooms apart, who call for greater armament and map the battle chart. But out along the shattered field, where golden dreams turn gray, how very young the faces were, where all the dead men lay. Portly and solemn in their pride, the elders cast their vote for this or that, or something else that sounds the martial note. But where their sightless eyes stare out, beyond life's vanished toys, I've noticed nearly all the dead were hardly more than boys. And to play for Coach Wooden was, without question, the single greatest privilege that I've had in my life until I got here to Rochester on this trip. And if you could just visualize for a moment what it was like to be on that special team. Coach Wooden, who lived by Mother Teresa's mantra, that a life not lived for others is not a life. He turned that into the world of sports. A game not played for others is not a game. And our practices were so intense, so fierce, so incredibly challenging. Really the most demanding thing that I've ever done in my life now. And here for 2 solid hours, we'd just be out there racing up and down at full speed with no water, no towels, no chairs, no talking, nothing. But 12 young men chasing down their dream of being part of something special. And there was Coach Wooden in his basketball uniform, up and down the sideline, pushing, prodding, always constructive, always positive, always upbeat, always building, learning himself that as a teacher you have not taught until they've learned. And the whole time throwing out these thousands of little maxims that he's come up with over his now 95 years. Things like, be quick, but don't hurry. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. Happiness begins when selfishness ends. Never mistake activity for achievement. The worst things you could do for the ones you love are the things they could and should do for themselves. And while we're out there playing and chasing it all down, we're looking over at this silly old man saying, shut up, coach, leave us alone. Let us play ball out here. And now, I've got 4 children who have grown up in this world of John Wooden and UCLA basketball. Our house is a shrine. Our house is a memorial to John Wooden, with the pyramid of success everywhere, his pictures just leering at us. And as my children are going through their own world and chasing down their dreams, whatever it is, I'm always telling them, be quick, but don't hurry. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. I'm writing on their lunch bags, happiness begins when selfishness ends. And they're looking at me saying, Dad, shut up, leave us alone. And here's Coach Wooden at 95, standing off in the shadows saying, Walton, you are indeed the slowest learner that I've ever had. But then, as in everything, practice and preparation came to an end. Then it was time to play. And who's really got a game? That ability to deliver peak performance on command. And so here we were in a situation, 12 young, impressionable teenagers in this room, the locker room, with the walls breathing down. We're doing our push-ups, we're slap fighting, playing pepper with the ball, and we're just so fired up. We're going to go out there and just trounce the St. Bonaventure Bonnies. And here we were going over the scouting report of Pat Olivetto. And Coach Wooden comes walking into that room. And now, no longer dressed in his basketball uniform, but immaculately attired, approved by David Stern as well in the dress code. Hair slicked back, glasses all polished, little hanky right there. You can even pull one up in today's suits. It's unbelievable. Coach Wooden had that ever-present, rolled-up program. And who would have ever